You know what? You're looking 4 to 5 years. Yeah, she's just not sleeping at all.
I know. And I'm off. Love it.
What are you going?
Yes, I'm glad it's right back in its normal place.
And they don't. You work. So you don't stop.
They all matter. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to call the meeting to order. So Brian and Tony, you want to come up and start your presentation? Brian, I almost didn't know who you were.
Pretty sharp.
I'm talking about my hair.
I don't even want to talk about the hair.
I'm sorry, Tony.
That's all right. We had this nostalgic conversation earlier. So I became back involved with alternative ed right at the beginning of the first semester. And Brian came and said, hey, listen, I've got some ideas about some things I'd like to put into place. So Brian's presentation today is pretty comprehensive. and well thought out. There's some things when I ran alternative schools that are similar. I'm very excited about some of the new ideas he's got and this holistic approach. So I'm just going to sit in the background, and if Brian needs me, he'll holler, but I doubt that will be the case.
All right, good evening. I know some of you. I know I haven't got to meet all of you, but for those that I haven't got to meet yet, my name is Brian Hammondtree. I'm the principal at Elkhart Academy. So a little bit about Elkhart Academy. For those that don't know, we're the alternative high school for Elkhart Community Schools, and our mission right here is to serve all students, and we do that by creating an environment where students are going to learn to navigate life, find their purpose, become productive members of our community. We phrase it that way because a lot of students, most of our students, are going to be lifelong Elkhart residents. So we really want to find ways to help them build skills and connect them, and help them realize that they are a part of this community and a contributor to the community. And we do that by creating a safe and collaborative culture where we meet all students' needs. And the main way we do that is through relationships. Our students a lot of times don't arrive to us on a winning streak. So we see a lot of the behavior as communication, and they're trying to communicate to us their missing needs or missing skills and unmet needs. And we work with them to try to figure out what those are. And we are constantly looking at how we design our program to better meet those needs and build those skills. That's kind of what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about tonight. But before I get into that, I want to talk about what we've been able to accomplish over the past few years. So I've been at Elkhart Academy. It'll be 3 years this month. So not super long. Sometimes it feels like I just started and I'm drinking from a fire hose. But there's been staff that have been at Elkhart Academy for a long time, and they have helped me acclimate to the position and helped me learn and grow. And I think the new staff we brought on has only added value to that. We've come up with some really great achievements that I want to share with you guys. Over the past few years, we compared this attendance percentage to pre-COVID levels. So it's not like we're saying, hey, the 50% of attendance we had during e-learning, like we're not comparing it to that. We're comparing it to pre-COVID. So we've had a 10% increase in student attendance. We've also had a 10% increase in students graduating or remaining in an educational program. And what I mean by that, if we get a student that maybe is a senior and they have 10 credits, which can happen sometimes, we work with them to get them as close to the finish line as possible. And then we make sure that they're connected so they can get that diploma and carry that through to whatever's next for them. Because we see that as success too, because we're helping the student. And then we've seen a 47% decrease in significant behavior incidents. And we define significant behavior incidents as things like fighting or physical confrontation, things that might be a detriment to that safe learning environment. And the reason we've been able to accomplish that is we have a dedicated, hardworking staff that's been able to come together and try some new things, some new approaches to how we interact with students, communicate with students, design our instruction and make it engaging for them, and do things in some new and creative ways. But there are some limitations to what we're providing right now due to our design. So here are some things that we're trying to work to improve, specifically in the areas of academic achievement. So our average GPA for our students is 1.62. A lot of that is due to the credits and grades they've earned coming into our program. We work hard to improve that GPA over time, but we're getting students as juniors, as seniors, so we're working from a deficit, right? The graduation requirements that the state has set out too has changed in recent years. So I have a slide later on, but it doesn't look great. So we're going to skip it. I'm going to do a quick explanation of what our students are facing right now. So box one, there's 3 boxes that students need to check for graduation requirements. So some of you already know about this. Box 1 is the credits, the 40 credit thing, right? So previously our program set up is designed, and it was designed really well to make sure students have the opportunity to earn those 40 credits so they can get their diploma. Now, in addition to that, they have to, so that's box 1 still in place. Now box 2 and box 3 has been added. Box 2 is that demonstration of workplace skills. So that could be a service learning, extended service learning, project-based learning, or work-based learning. So we need to find opportunities to provide for our students who have some unique needs, right? So they can demonstrate that, so we can show the state that they have achieved that box 2 criteria. Then there's box 3, which is the post-secondary competency skills that they need to demonstrate. And they can do that in a variety of ways. One is your typical standardized tests. So they accept, the state accepts ASVAB and SAT as standardized tests to show that students have met those box 3 requirements. And so here's kind of where we're at Elkhart Academy when it comes to meeting some of those box 2 and box 3 requirements, which are the rigor of those are increasing over the next year. ASVAB, we have 14% of our seniors that met the cut score. We have no juniors last year, at least, that met the SAT cut score. Our current juniors have not taken the test yet, so we're hoping to increase that. What we do for those students right now is we have to find a pathway, a career pathway, where they take enough credits to demonstrate that they have some post-secondary competency and a particular pathway to check box 3. Now, the requirements for those classes are now extending to include a year-long, and next year will be 2 year-long classes that can't be taken concurrently. So if we're getting juniors and seniors to make sure all of those things are completed before the end of their 4-year high school career, it's becoming increasingly complex. So we need to look at, I believe, look at our current design and see how can we adjust to meet the diverse needs of our students so we can send them off, not just with a diploma, but on the path to whatever's next, right? Right now, our failure rate for our students, and what I mean by that, students failing at least one class, 81% of our students are failing at least one class. Because they're coming in, like I said, they're not always coming in on a winning streak. They haven't been successful in a traditional setting. I think there are ways that we can build those academic success skills within our program to reduce that dramatically. MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, that's a system of creating an intentional intervention plan for each student that needs extra support, whether that's in academics, behavior, attendance. Every student that's been referred to Elkhart Academy, right, has been identified as needing tier 3 support, the highest level of support. So each of those students should really have a detailed intervention plan through our MTSS process, which we have a great MTSS team. We have one, I think our MTSS coordinator right here. So there's a lot of Elkhart Academy staff here tonight. Thanks, guys. So she leads a team that looks at a group of students every other week so that she can develop a plan and then review plans for those students so we can provide those high levels of support for specific needs. However, there's only so much time, and she's doing this after school, right, with a group of teachers that are committed to doing that. So we really need to get all students in that process because they've already been identified by the high school as needing that tier 3 intervention. And then graduation progress is kind of the last area of need I want to touch on. Right now, 35% of our students are on track to graduate with their cohort. So they're coming in behind. After some time with us, we're able to move them on track, especially with box one. But with higher levels of need, with the students that are coming in, and we're seeing students come in later in their junior and senior year, we're needing to find different ways to get them the classes that they need at the time they need them.
Brian?
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your goals? What are the goals? So you're, for example, you're at the GPA, you've got 1.62. What is your goal for that? What is your goal for your percent passing? What is your goal for your graduation number on track?
Mm-hmm. So in some of these, I'm addressing right here, but our guiding coalition, our leadership team, is in the process of doing a comprehensive needs assessment, which is kind of like what birthed like this idea. Is we're looking at, okay, what have we done well? We've done a lot well, but here's where we still need to improve. And our plan is going to outline specific data points we want to get to. But ideally, we want 100% of our students to meet all three boxes. And I think that's not an unrealistic goal. Like, I don't think it's outlandish to say that, like, maybe not 100% of our students are going to meet that cut score of the SAT, but with the right design, 100% of our students can graduate.
How many students do you currently have in the academy?
We have 134 right now. We cap out at 150, just because we have to stay within a 1 to 15 staff to student ratio to meet the IDOE requirements as an alternative program.
And the majority of those are juniors and seniors?
Right now, I would say about 60% are juniors and seniors. We had an influx of freshmen this year that is a little unusual, but a lot of those students, almost all of them, will transition to the high school by the end of the year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Brian?
Yeah.
You might mention that. So the alternative ed, one of the important, okay, she's going to think about one of the things that I think is important is Brian is talking about who gets inherited. The state of Indiana for alternative ed identifies that you have to meet one of the criteria and you say that's what you're working at. Ours really says that students are in danger of dropping out or failing out of school. So we would expect that most students coming to the academy would probably be in the boat that Brian is describing right now.
We currently make a significant impact on the district's graduation rate. So if every 4 or 5 students is a percentage, right, and we have 20 seniors, right, it's really important for us to graduate all 20, because it could be a huge drop. And 100% of our seniors would have been dropouts. Students come to us for a variety of reasons. The main criteria that the state sets out that we use to identify students is they're either intending to drop out or withdraw, they're young parents, they need to work to support their family, they have had a failure to comply academically, or they have demonstrated over time a pattern of disruptive behavior. So we have to design a pretty creative program to meet all those different types of needs. And I think with the right design, we can continue to increase the attendance rate, improve the GPA, less students will fail their classes, increase our success rate, which is that when I talked about students graduating, or if they did not meet all those requirements, making sure that they're still connected with an educational opportunity, whether that's in the community or even within Elkhart Community Schools, like adult ed or something like that. And then making sure we improve the number of students that, once they're finished, are enrolled in college, employed, or enlisted in the military. So some of these new model changes were based off of some research I was able to do and some individuals I was able to meet that have directed me towards a school in Fort Collins, Colorado, that has started doing some of these things and has found real success. So adjusting the schedule, the overall instructional calendar, and then the weekly schedule to meet the shifting needs of our students and the shifting graduation requirements is one part of the change that I'm proposing, and then how we enroll and onboard our students that will support their academic success in the classroom and help with teacher efficacy as well. So currently, we operate on a semester schedule, just like the high school. All right, so we offer 2 semesters where students are enrolled in 4 in-person credits per semester. Now, the way that we meet those box 1 requirements, getting the right amount of credits, because if we only did the 4 in-person credits every semester, students would, and they started with us as a freshman and went all the way through, hypothetically, but they would be short, right? So what we do is we use Apex, we use some work-based learning credits, the Career Center, some other ways to supplement that. With a 6-week grading period, especially because we're having a lot of juniors and seniors, so we need to accelerate that even more. With a 6-week grading period, through the course of the year, if a student started with us in August and went all the way through the year, it would increase the amount of credits that they could earn by 50%. So they would go from earning possibly 8 credits for a school year to 12. Our students learn a lot better in person with the teacher in front of them. Apex is a great tool for some of our students, but not for all of them. And we're trying to meet the needs of every single one. Some of our students do a great job in the Career Center. Some students aren't eligible. They don't meet attendance and GPA requirements. And some just aren't ready. So we need to make sure we're offering as much in-house as we can. And then working with our teachers and using the PLC process, we'd be able to create 6-week unit plans for each course that meets all the essential standards, same as the high school. And then students in a 6-week grading period would be able to receive consistent and continuous instruction because of how we're enrolling them, and being able to focus on a limited number of courses, 2 at a time, really focused instruction, moving along as a group with the unit plans that have been designed by the teacher. I talked about that. This is this slide I didn't feel looked great because it's so small. So I just thought I'm going to explain it. But I put it up here anyway. All right. So the other part of, so that was the instructional calendar part. The weekly schedule, because we need to find time within the day to focus on box 2 and box 3. Because I can ask all day long, I can use, all these magical combinations of words to try to encourage students to make sure, okay, once you leave here, here are the 9 things you got to do that the state has told me you now have to do to earn your diploma, right? But a student going home without the same resources and support that they're receiving in school, right? Without the transportation, without the certified instructors, asking them to do some of this is really difficult, right? It's a difficult, it's a pretty heavy lift, and they need our help. So having a weekly schedule where we have 4 days focused on core content area classes, principles of business, which right now is our main pathway. We're trying to integrate educational professions as well. Having JAG classes, which is a career and college focused class to help students prepare and do things like resumes and stuff like that. And having an intentional advisory period that when we talk about that relationship piece, we were really intentional during advisory where students are paired up with a staff member that checks in on them, not just academically, but like what's going on at home, what are some, like if the student's on probation, like what do you need to do to make sure you're doing the requirements so you can get your freedom back? What are, maybe they're working on getting their driver's license. What's the next step you need to do on that? So that's where our advisors step in and look at the whole student and try to support them. And we would do that 4 days a week. And then on a 5th day, we would focus on box 2 and box 3. And I'll kind of spell this out in more detail in a future slide, but we would have students focused on service learning, work-based learning, which is the box 2 requirement, working time within our day to make sure every single student has the opportunity to get that box checked. And then doing SAT and ASVAB prep. So those students, especially the ones that are on the bubble. So the cut score, here's an example. We had 14% of our students pass the ASVAB, or seniors passed the ASVAB last year. We had quite a few that were 28, scored a 28 to 30. It's a 31 to pass. So they're right there. But they can't retake it without committing to enlist in the military, and that's not something that all of them want to do. But I believe with the teachers that we have, we would be able to really intentionally focus on those students and help them get over that hump before they actually take that test. For the ASVAB and the SAT, we could increase that pass rate dramatically. And then we can also focus on those next level programs of study courses that take students so long to get through, and we can't have them take them concurrently. But we have staff that are helping students with that, but they really need time and space to do that. Because right now we're asking them to do that independently at home or wherever they're at when they're not with us. And then starting, I think this year, or maybe it's next year, I know the 8th graders that are coming into high school are all going to be automatically enrolled in the 21st Century Scholar program. So we're going to make sure that all students that are eligible and they've already been enrolled are doing the things that they need to do to access that opportunity. And we can work that into a school day. So this is what that day, we call it Success Day, looks like for all the members of the Elkhart Academy community. So students, like we mentioned, will be focused on those things. The certified staff would use that day. All of their planning and preparation would occur on that day uninterrupted. So they could really focus on developing those comprehensive 6-week unit plans. They would be able to team up using the MTSS process to create an intervention plan for every single student that's enrolled in the Elkhart Academy. We would be able to participate in case conferences. And what I mean by that is students that receive special education services, they have an individualized education plan. About 30% of Elkhart Academy students have an IEP. And what that means is for them, they're guaranteed at least one case conference per year. And many of our students, most of our students that have an IEP have more than one because they need transition case conferences. Anytime we adjust the services they're being provided, which is a lot, because we want to make sure to get it right and give them the best service possible, we need to have a case conference. And all stakeholders need to be invited. That's parents, guardians, that's gen ed teachers, that's special education teachers, that's administrators. It's all hands on deck to do what's right for the student. We want to make sure that we have increased engagement and participation in those case conferences. Having a day dedicated where we can schedule those would increase that attendance and participation. And then the professional development that's really needed to work with students that have experienced high levels of trauma, isn't going away. It's only increasing. We've had, to be honest, a pretty difficult year this year. Some of you may have already known. We've had 2 students die this year, and that's been tough, not just as working with our students that have had that trauma that they've experienced, but it's affected us, myself personally. And we need to be able to be equipped to take care of our students and take care of each other, because this isn't just going to go away, right? We're gonna have to make sure we take care of our staff, so we can have that highly trained, highly effective staff that we retain to provide a really important service for our district. And then our classified staff, so all of our student support staff, paraprofessionals, that sort of thing, would help facilitate those box 2 and box 3 activities for our students to make sure we're not just saying, hey, good luck out there finding that service learning opportunity, right? We would help find them for them, help go with them to show them like what this looks like, how to track it, because there's specific ways we have to document it, and then also helping them prepare to take those standardized tests or pass those next level programs and study courses. Any questions on that before I move on? Because I feel like I'm going really fast. Okay. All right. Another big change would be how we enroll students and onboard them into our program. So right now we have a rolling enrollment, which is how this program has operated, I think, since it started. Rolling enrollment means when the student needs us, they start with us, right? We try to keep that referral to orientation window within a week so that there's not a huge gap of time, right? Now, that's been really good in a lot of ways, but we're running into some obstacles with that, especially with I think it directly relates to some of the students' academic performance. With that failure rate, that 81% 81% failure rate, I think this really plays into that. So when we have a group of students that start with us in August and they're enrolled in algebra, right? They're working with a teacher that has worked really hard developing a unit plan and a scope and sequence and delivering instruction with this group, and they're moving along together. And then throughout the semester, so from August to up to Thanksgiving break, they're constantly getting new students enrolled in their class. So they're no longer, by November, they're no longer teaching one group of students that has moved along together, and they're not identifying who needs help and who needs, maybe some opportunities for extension. Now they have, and they're not all starting, the new students aren't starting together. They might be, in groups of two or three at times, but a lot of times it's one here, one there, 2 this week, 3 next week. And the problems that creates is now the students aren't moving along together, and they're not following that well-designed unit plan that the teacher has worked so hard on. And the teacher's having difficulty because they're one person now teaching 14 different classes within one class, if that makes sense. Beginning students every 6 weeks would allow them to start as a group, move through a course as a group, and end as a group. The teachers would be better equipped to meet the students' needs and identify what those needs are when they're happening, instead of constantly trying to say, okay, you started in August, but you started in October. I'm going to have to go back to see if you know what I taught him in August, right? We could all move along together. And then every student would start with an introductory course. You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So because the high school's on 9-week grading periods, how does that affect when you take students? Because now you've got a program that's offering, if a student wants to move or move, how do you determine if there's one at the traditional high school that needs to move before the end of the grading period?
Yeah.
So then that sets him back really like an additional 3 weeks that he's got to wait to get in.
Yeah.
Because of the timing. So how does that work? And how often how many kids are we talking about that transitioning like on the rolling? So how many?
That's a really good question. So right now, because we cut off enrollment for the first semester after Thanksgiving break, because there's just not enough time for us to get through an entire semester. So what we do with those students is they work from home on some Apex classes that they can recover some credits while they wait for us to start the new semester. So we would use the same process, and I think it would be to the students' benefit because they're going to be able to receive this high level of intentional instruction. Every student comes to us with an ISP, individual service plan. So that identifies which of those 5 alternative ed criteria that they meet, and then some goals that the students need to work on, academic and behavior goals, in order to transition back to the high school. We would still use that process because it's a requirement and I think it's effective. But we would only transition those students back at semester breaks, because then they're not jumping in to the high school classes in the middle of a semester. And now we've just switched roles. Now they're dealing with the same issue we're dealing with now. So I think this would address the needs of both programs, or the high school and our program. Did that answer your question? All students would then start with an introductory course. Right now, they're jumping in and we're asking students that have not been successful at school for whatever reason to come to an environment that we think is catering to a lot of their needs, but we're also not starting out with like those basic success skills that we would say. I know I've had conversations with individuals where they talk about, well, the students should already know these things. Well, yeah, I don't disagree, but they don't. So it's our job to help teach them, because when we do, then they're going to be successful and they're going to take off, and they're going to be those contributing members of our community. They're going to be like the next group of leaders in Elkhart. And I really believe that. So we start every school year with kind of a crash course for a couple days in what Elkhart Academy is. We talk about, our core values, what it looks like to be successful here at Elkhart Academy, and what it's going to take to earn your high school diploma. We talk about all those things, expectations of the program, all that. But if you don't start with us in August or in January, at the beginning of the semester, you miss out on a lot of that. And we can't go back and redo that every week for students that have already done it. So what I'm proposing is that every student starts their first 6 weeks with an extended version of that. And it would be credit earning. They would be elective credits, which we have identified a couple that we think we could meet the criteria for. And they would learn about what it takes to be successful at Elkhart Academy, and then what it's going to take to be successful beyond that too, whether that's transitioning back to the high school or after graduation, what it's going to take to graduate. We'll introduce them to some service learning. We'll talk about pride. We'll talk about character education. How are they going to be successful members of our community at Elkhart Academy first, because that's what we want to teach them to be. And then they can expand into, the high school or even in the community at large. And this will also give us time to identify the students' needs so we can really make a detailed MTSS intervention plan for every single student. Because we can meet the student and see what they got going on paper, but sometimes if I see a student that has, a 12% in biology and a 0% in algebra, and it's not giving me the full picture. But if I can do some diagnostics with the student one-on-one or in a small group, I can learn a lot more about them and be able to meet their academic needs a lot better. Sometimes our students come to us, they haven't got that win yet, getting some wins under their belt allows them to experience success for the first time, and they really take off. We do awards assemblies every month. I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but bear with me. We do awards assemblies every month, and earlier this year, we had a student that won, like 3 teachers that said that they were the student of the month. So we gave her the overall student of the month, called her back up. She burst into tears. I was like, what's happening? Sometimes I don't do great with emotions, and her crying got me choked up. I'm like, what do I do? And I don't know what's wrong. And she says that she had never gotten an award ever at school, like ever in her whole life. And this is a student that is just crushing it right now. It just took a couple wins to get some traction, to get her feet under her, and now she's taking off. So I think that introductory course will help the students do that and help us be able to guide the students to what are those first wins going to be. And I talked a little bit about this. I should have switched slides, but I didn't. But this is more in detail of what we would have one of our teachers lead the students through during their first 6 weeks. And then after that, they would move into another 6 weeks where they're taking their core content area classes, their math, English, science, social studies, all those box one requirements. Any questions on? Yeah, no, great, yeah.
Got a lot of questions, but one of the things that the link that you sent us, talking about the school district that this high school is in, Centennial High School.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting and didn't know if you were going to try and incorporate any of this in. Was that with the introductory, they strongly encourage the parents to come and be involved and have them put through a 2-hour training session to learn the skills and what the kids are going to be taught and stuff. Have you thought about doing that so that way the parents are kind of in sync, those that choose to be involved are kind of in sync and know what their kids are going to be learning about, that they can help kind of focus on those areas at home, so if they so choose.
Yeah, I would actually, I've reached out to the principal at Centennial because that question because I want to ask him, like, how do you make that happen?
Exactly.
Because that's such a great idea. And I would like to pick his brain and maybe even, I don't know, spend some time with him somehow to learn more about how they're making this work. Because the design they freely share, but I know that there's more to that. There's probably like an art to it that I would like to find out more about.
Well, and I thought it was interesting too, because, it said that they only took 25 new students every 6 weeks, but they also, the kids had to be accepted into the program.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that they talked about the 6 Ps, being prompt, that was a key thing. If you were going to be late to the orientation meeting, don't bother coming because you're not going to be accepted.
Yeah.
So it's starting to build those skills and those expectations right away. Being polite, prepared, participate, positive mental attitude, and then the last one was to produce.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting, and just how they kind of set it all up with the expectation on the very front end and getting references, that this is a very specialized program, and that you're lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think having that kind of exclusive presentation to the students would also help them understand the value of the opportunity they're receiving.
Right.
Obviously, we would still continue to serve the students that are needing it, and maybe not all of them are quite there yet. But I think there's a balance into having that be the expectation and knowing that some students are going to have to grow into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know you had asked earlier how many students would we have. We would still have to keep that 150 cap because of our current staffing. So we wouldn't be able to enroll more students than we would be able to, unless we were sending some students back. We would have to just stay after that number.
Yeah.
Any other questions, anything like that? So I know this group has been super supportive of our program over the last few years, and I am genuinely grateful that you guys show up in our building and meet us and meet our students, and it's been great to have your guys' support. And I know that I've been able to speak recently kind of at random to different alternative program directors or people that are trying to start alternative programs in the area, in Indiana and in Michigan. For some reason, they have heard about our program and reached out to us and asked what we've been doing. And I'm excited to say we have a lot of support in our district. I think that this is an opportunity to build on that and become the premier alternative program, not just in the area, not just in the state, but anywhere. I think we could really take this to, the next level. And our students deserve it. I think our staff already deserve it. They have earned it. And I think that giving us a chance to try this and have kind of a proof of concept will allow us to deliver, on what we promised our students and their families. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being willing to listen to me. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would you say to the people who say they don't really want to support in the alternative education because it feels like we're giving the students a pass and we encourage them to like dumb down their education instead of staying in traditional school? That I'm sure that's something you've heard.
Yeah.
So what would you say if you have the platform now? What would you say to those people to help them understand why this is important?
These are the students, like I said, they are lifelong, most of them are going to be lifelong Elkhart residents. Like these are going to be our next community leaders. If we aren't willing to love and support them and help them grow into that now, right, we can't sit back and complain about it when we're not, when our community isn't growing and thriving. This is our chance to do that. And anyone that wants to be convinced of that, they can come visit us and they can see it in action. Because I think that seeing the students and seeing like kind of, it's different when you hear about a student, or read about them on paper, but seeing them in person, seeing their face, like it adds a different level, and you realize like this is what we're showing up for, right? We're showing up to help like our neighbor, right? And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Did you pick the date yet for the morning and afternoon graduation?
If Grace Shevik is here.
Grace, did you pick
Yeah.
them yet? At the end of the year, the morning and the afternoon, the end of the year program for the seniors. Did you pick the date yet? The date.
What?
Did you pick the dates yet?
Oh, yes, I do have them. It's, what's our last day of school, the 25th? So I think, the 23rd will be our senior dinner.
Brian, can you repeat that for the people
Maybe the
online?
17th is our
What she's
senior
saying.
dinner and the 19th is our award.
Yeah, the 19th is the awards and the 17th is the senior dinner for Elkhart Academy. Yeah, whoever wants to
I'll
come,
invite
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to,
The senior dinner we have to pay for.
Yeah.
Everyone can go.
Yeah, I just want to pick on work, so. It's a morning and an afternoon, and it starts, it's like, what, 10 and 1, or?
Oh, it's like 9 and I don't think the time is.
Yeah, the time will be different because
I have
of
to talk to
the
the boss.
availability of the room.
I don't get, even though I was born on Christmas, I don't get to make the decision.
I can't, it's not right,
Somebody else does that. I'm not at the top of the food chain,
and that's bad.
even though I think I am.
Well, keep thinking it, Grace, keep thinking.
Is there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
The work session is adjourned. We'll take a 10-minute break before starting the board meeting.
I know. You gotta find the other one. Just remember what I said.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order if everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And the flag is in the right place.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And even with Brian being here and talking about the students, if we just take a moment in silence for those that have, we've lost our loved ones, our babies to suicide, to gun violence, to drug overdose. Thank you. Ready? The Elkhart Promise. Every student is known by name, challenged and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community will graduate career, college ready, and life ready.
Thank you, Kelly. You will have an opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. Doug, can you hold up that, since you're sitting at the table? There.
Yes, I'm here.
Not you, Doug, Weaver, the door.
Mr. Weaver, I occasionally get it confused.
Okay.
There's a form in the back. If you fill it out, you'll have 3 minutes to speak at the end of the board meeting. After each agenda item, I will ask for questions or comments from the audience. We do not have a moment of pride today, so is there a motion to approve the consent items?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Okay, so we have these awards. Our ROTC received $2,000 for the military ball from the Professional Dental Laboratory. The Elkhart High School for a science trip received $1,350 from Innova. Mary Daly received $1,575 from Augustina Lutheran Church. So the boys track received $6,000 from Linda Homo to develop and grow the track team. They also received $500 from DMB Environmental, and NEBA gave to the school system $10,600. Phyllis Tubb donated $300 to buy a state ring for Lucas Bird. The Elkhart Logix Robotics Club, the Elk Logix Robotics received $500 from Priority One Construction. Northside received $711 for the 7+11 Project a Game for Husky Awards from Laura McGowan. $250 were donated from Ivy Tech as a patron sponsor for Mean Girls. $500 was a patron sponsor for Mean Girls from Tim and Sarah Myers. $1,000 from the Thomas Nickel Golf Cart World was donated to Mean Girls, which, stopping right there for a second, if you didn't see Mean Girls, who saw Mean Girls in this room? I am telling you, that was the most amazing, little risque, but amazing performance I have seen. I cannot get over the talent that we have in our school. I'll talk about that later. Back to the awards. Woodland Elementary received $2,500 from the Community Foundation from Ashley Martin and Bernie Haskins. They also received $500 from Lula Shores Campground. Katie Emery, that was for the backpacks for food, hygiene, winter supplies, or needs that the students would have over the weekend. $3,000 was donated also from Chapel Hill Church and Pastor Jeff Schneider. That is everything we received from our community partners.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait, we have to do a roll call vote. Sorry, I forgot.
Start with Mr. Burnett.
Aye.
Mr. Byler.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Weaver.
Mr.
Mr. Weaver.
Aye.
Mrs. Vandervellen.
Aye.
And Mrs. Mullins.
Aye.
Motion passes. Up next, we have the feasibility update.
So this past week in our feasibility study process, the representatives from School IQ were here and worked with the community, key community committee on Tuesday to discuss, again, their overall objectives of looking at a variety of factors across our buildings the demographic information that has been shared with them and survey results that have been shared, and how that will lead to a series of a couple of recommendations for the board to act upon, again, in conjunction with the hiring of the new superintendent, to determine where that goes and to begin a strategic planning process at that point to implement one or more changes depending on what comes from that committee. The second meeting last week spent a good deal of time looking at grade alternatives or grade configurations, how buildings might be configured with particular grade levels and what that might mean across the district to look at things differently and exploring some of the possibilities there. This coming week on Tuesday and Thursday of next week will be 2 more meetings of that key committee to continue to look at that question and also look at capacity of buildings and the shape of buildings. Anything else from board members?
No, I just also want to add that we do have that button on our website where you can view all of the information, all of the reports. So we do invite anybody to engage in that on the website. Also, I just wanted to give an update about the superintendent search because it is closely related to the feasibility study. The board did interview several search firms last week. We will probably sometime this week decide on a search firm, and the official process will be starting soon. So I just want to give everybody an update about that. Any other comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, up next we have an instructional report.
All right, good evening. As we're getting ready to talk about the instructional report, Lindsay's handing out the second goal from the learning plan that is out, and wanted to share those numbers kind of mid-semester. So these numbers were pulled at the semester break. I'm going to start off by talking about Area 1. When we looked at behavior and Tier 1 behavior, we developed a plan, we being Lindsay and I developed a plan about putting into place, making sure that Pride was across the school district, and then took the plan to the guiding coalition for the district and reviewed it with that particular group. And we are now actually starting to implement the plan. What we needed to do first was have the school-wide evaluation tool taught to the liaisons. And liaisons are folks from the central office that work together with a specific building. What the school-wide evaluation tool is it is they call it the SET. It is from the Office of Special Education Programming through the Federal Department of Education, and it is a research-based outside evaluator, meaning not somebody from that particular building, to go in and assess by collecting products from the school, meeting with the leader of the school, and then assessing through a rubric and interviews. And you can see it looks pretty comprehensive. It's linked in, and we can get you a copy if you would like a specific copy. The process actually is pretty brief. I was able to work with several folks earlier, and then Lindsay and I have done a couple of buildings already where we've gone in, a couple of folks volunteered, and actually collected some initial data. And then we'll be getting back with each of those buildings to talk about where their data showed them. So why is this important? Well, as we start going back to the plan, schools need to know where they are implementing at this Tier 1 level. And what the school-wide evaluation tool does is it gives an overall score and a specific area score. So when you're done, buildings know where their strengths are in implementing the school-wide Pride plan, and it lets them know what areas they need to focus a little bit more on. And the overall score also allows them to know whether they're ready to move beyond Tier 1 or not. Why it's important that this is an outside evaluator piece is it because then it allows them to have a view of somebody else from the outside seeing what's going on the inside. All right. Then at the end of this, by spring break, all the schools will have received their set assessment. All right. At that point, then the teams will, we've come up with some training money through special education to be, because we see some some disparity when we look at students in discipline and special education, so we can apply some money for that, for those teams then to rework their PBIS plans. And when I say PBIS, positive behavior intervention and support, it goes hand in hand with PRIDE. We call our PBIS plan here PRIDE, persistence, respectfulness, initiative, dependability, and efficiency. From there, then we'll invite some schools who have some tier 1 training problems to specific trainings to help them update or work on their plans if that's something they would like to do. And that's again where those teams will have the money to work spring and summer together. And then Lindsay and I will work together with those teams to be able to supplement those plans. Then in the very fall, after teams have been able to put in things into place, they'll move into what's called the benchmarks of quality. The benchmarks of quality is also offered by the federal government. Oops, it linked me to a different spot. The benchmarks of quality, and I'll get you a copy of the BOQ.
Tony, if you go to the teaching and learning tab,
Yeah.
then it should be within the spreadsheet.
Okay, my bad.
The green one.
To the left. There we go. All
Right
right.
there.
So here is the, thank you very much. Here is the assessment for the BOQ. The BOQ, the benchmarks of quality, is very different because it is a much more comprehensive assessment, but it's a comprehensive assessment that's done by the team itself. So when you get into this assessment, it is much more picky because the team is actually doing a self-assessment. And after we've done the external assessment, that gives the team the time then to go in, make some of the changes they need to, and then after a few months, assess by October of next year, where are we really now that we've done these changes. This is a pretty common practice for schools to use an outside assessment first, and then an internal assessment, and then go back to an outside assessment again at another point, usually on an annual basis. All right. So that is area A for the teaching and learning. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually, you know what? If you want to talk about B,
Okay. How do I go back? There we go. Okay, so for B, which this is our very specific, and this is the paper that I handed. This is the paper that I handed to you. This has the data on there. So when we were developing the teaching and learning plan for the school year, we wanted to focus on some targeted data to reduce student-to-student conflicts. So student conflicts in the 4 areas that we chose were physical fights, bullying, physical confrontation, and verbal confrontation. Something important to note in here is the data that we pull out of PowerSchool. Currently, we use PowerSchool, like that process, to report consequences. So when a student receives a consequence for an action, that is reported into PowerSchool under their discipline reports. That's where this data comes from. For an event to be logged as bullying in PowerSchool, it has gone through the administrators who've gone through the investigative process. They have determined that yes, this was a bullying event. Then it is logged in PowerSchool as a bullying event. That data is reported to the state. So at the end of the year last year, all of the baseline data that we had from 21-22, you can see what our numbers were on the left there. Fights 780, 192 reported bullying events logged into PowerSchool. Physical confrontations and verbal confrontations. Our goal was to reduce these student incidents, student-to-student conflict incidents by 20% by the end of the school year. For the fall semester 2022, you can see where we are halfway through. We are on target for physical fighting. One thing to note about bullying, we will see an increase. We have retrained all of our staff members or our administrative team on going through the investigative protocol. We have re-pushed out Sprigio for students and staff members and community members to report bullying. So we are getting more incidences in to Sprigio. We've tripled the number of reports that have come in through Sprigio. Those aren't all necessarily bullying events per se, but more people are reporting. We're doing more investigations, so our numbers will be higher. Physical confrontation and verbal confrontation, we're kind of on target with where we were last year. At the end of this school year, we will look at our cumulative data to see where it is and where we need to make changes for next year. One thing I would like to note that we've noticed as we've been pulling this data is we don't really have a clear definition of what some of this stuff might mean when people are putting it into PowerSchool. So we'll be cleaning that up. Doug and I will be working on that this summer to ensure that we have a clear
understanding of what we're reporting into Power School and ensuring that we are making those reports in Power School. Okay, do you want me to jump down to the bullying stuff?
No, Lindsay, before you jump up, if I can ask a
Yeah.
quick question. Can you define what the difference is between bullying and physical confrontation, verbal confrontation, and physical fights? I mean, I think I know what a physical fight is,
Right.
but how is that different from a physical confrontation? And where does bullying fit in? Where
Right,
does
so
verbal-
bullying has a very specific, there's intent to harm, there's a power imbalance, there are very specific criteria. So there's not equal power between two students. They're not getting into a tiff in the hallway and swearing at each other. There is a student that is intentionally targeting another student with the intent to harm, and there is a power imbalance. So that is why we go through that investigative protocol, so we're not missing that. Physical fights and physical confrontations, and this is kind of where it's a gray area and where I'd like to clean it up a little bit. I mean, physical fighting to me, when I was an administrator at Pure Moran, it was two kids, duking it out, punching in the hallway, right? Physical confrontation might be pushing or getting in each other's faces. There is some physical contact, but it's not fighting.
Hey, Lindsay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On the categories that you have right there, wouldn't virtual or cyber confrontation be one of them also?
That's kind of a challenging one. We don't record like cyberbullying separately from regular bullying in Power School. And depending on where it's happening and when and what device is being used, it is very challenging for us to track it that way, like as a data measure. But when we go through the bullying investigation protocol, that is one of the areas in there where we investigate cyberbullying.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about this data in particular? There are other areas of behavior that we measure and record and track. We just wanted to focus on what really will prevent our students from being productive citizens and to hold down jobs successfully. And it really is that interacting with others in an appropriate way. Those employability skills. Want me to jump over to Olveus now? Since we were talking about bullying, do you mind passing that out? I'm going to jump over to Olveus just to give you an update on where we are in that implementation. It won't let me push the button straight. One more. There we go. Okay, so our Olveus Bullying Prevention Program, this is a program that we have used within Elkhart for, I want to say 8-9 years it's been used. Yes, so at the beginning of this school year, we assigned a bully prevention coordinator to every building who would be in charge of coordinating the prevention efforts through Olveus. In the fall, we trained all of the building bullying prevention coordinators on the Olveus program and what their expectations were for rolling out the program and monitoring its implementation. This spring, 2023, we're finishing these up. Actually, we have a training tomorrow. It's our last one. We're training our building level bullying prevention coordinating committee members. It's a lot of words, but essentially it's kind of like your guiding coalition, but for bullying prevention. So these members the investigation protocol is an administrative function. The bullying prevention coordinating committee members are really the ones driving the prevention efforts within the school using the Olveus program. On April 18th, that's an e-learning day for our school. All frontline staff will be trained on the Olveus program at their individual building levels. So our custodians will take part in their building, our cafeteria workers will take part in their building, our bus drivers will take part in their buildings as well. So they'll all be trained on the core, which Tony has passed out to you. That's kind of like the outline of the program. Also, in May of this spring, students will complete the Olveus bullying questionnaire at the building level. That is not tracked as individual data. It really is to give that coordinating committee an overview for where are the hidden trouble spots. Where do they not feel safe? Do they feel like bullying is an accepted practice in the school? So it just gives that coordinating committee an idea of where the weaknesses and the strengths are in the prevention efforts. And then this summer, the bully prevention coordinators and their teams will need to review the questionnaire and to plan school-wide rollout for the fall. And for fall of 2023, that is our full district-wide implementation at every building. And then we are also going through the quality assurance process with the Olveus team out of Clemson University, where they will be evaluating our implementation process with Olveus. So that's kind of where we are in the rollout and prevention efforts. I did bring about 50 other handouts that you're more than welcome to have, but you don't have to take them. I didn't want to overload you with paper, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if you'd like to meet separately, that's fine as well.
Yeah, Lindsay, I have one question. Why Clemson?
I literally have no idea. Tony can answer that. I'm going to invite him up.
Clemson is the university in the United States that is the expert in Olveus and Olveus training. And so all of that stuff comes through Clemson University.
Thank you.
Any other questions about Olveus?
Yep. So that puts us back then to C. And I'm going to go up here. And when we look at area C, it was review the process and appropriateness of expulsions with the clear expectations of students and trying to reduce by 10% our expulsion requests. So it's an important differentiation between an expulsion request and an actual expulsion. John, do you mind if I pick on you since you're back here? So if John sends forward a request for an expulsion of his student, that then comes to the central office, right? That requested expulsion is not an expulsion until there's an offer of a hearing and the parent either chooses or chooses not because of due process rights. So John requests the expulsion, it comes here. What we do here then is I meet with any student who is a requested expulsion. And what we try to do is look at what the circumstances are and if we can come up with an alternative. The parent always has the right to a hearing. And we let them know that up front. And this is a long practice we've had to try to work with our students to be able to continue their education and see what we can do. Now, parents can choose to do a hearing, and in certain cases, we automatically say this is something that should go to a hearing. Last year, we actually had 5 students. If you see, last year we had 100 requests for expulsion. We had 95 alternative placements, meaning 95 students were put in and offered an alternative placement outside of their regular general education setting. And then 5 students actually went to or did not show up for an expulsion hearing and were actually expelled.
So when you say alternative place outside of their general education, give me an example.
So let me say, and I'll pick on John because I'm just making stuff up. John requests a student for an expulsion. This is not a true story. John requests a student for an expulsion because they did something in the school. When I meet with that student, we identify that maybe pride is a good placement for that student. They've got some behavioral issues. We've got a social worker there. We can try to keep that kid connected to school, but that kid is probably not. When I meet with students, I tell the parent quickly that I do not have the ability to have their student returned to the school because I'm not a hearing officer. If that's something they want to explore, then they need to go to a hearing, give their side of the story, the school will give their side of the story, and then the hearing officer will make a decision. So when I'm talking about alternative placements, I really mean alternative placements. It could be homebound. We've had some students where I've said, the best option for you really right now is to do homebound and try to hook their parents up with alternative mental health services, or we provide just whatever works best for that particular student at that particular time. All right. So when we're looking at those, then for the fall semester, we had 39 requests for expulsion. So we were on target, but I will remind when we're done at the end of the year, we tend to see more requests for expulsion second semester than first semester, which is
Cumulative.
Thank you, behavior for over the semester. So we'll see more students probably this second semester. However, some of the students we might have seen during the second semester may already be in a placement. So that may not actually come up. I'm very curious where our numbers will come, all right? So alternative placements right now, we were able to place all 39 of those students. I know the second semester, we've had a couple of parents request an expulsion hearing. You will see that they may have been an expulsion hearing, and yet we will still offer an alternative after the hearing if the parent is interested. What we know about students that are expelled is a student who is expelled once has about a 50% chance of graduation. A student who is expelled twice has about 0. It's nil when we look at data, not our data, national data. So if we're trying to figure out how to help some of our kids on that bubble, one of the things that we have a beautiful program for, we have some really good alternative school programs. So how are we using those to assist students who need something a little bit different than the general ed setting isn't working necessarily for them at this moment? Any questions on the expulsions or requests for expulsions?
Yeah, Tony, can we go back to B for a second?
Yep.
Wouldn't there be a category in there for confrontation with either teachers or administrators?
Yes, however, we wanted to focus specifically on student-to-student conflict incidences. We do track, and we have like the consequence data for that when a student receives a punishment because they've engaged physically or verbally with a staff member, with an adult in the building. We have that data, we track that data, we look at that data. I get a data report once a month for all of our schools, but this is specifically what we were focusing on was the student-to-student conflict incidences. For this goal, we work to reduce all of it, but for our teaching and learning plan and what interferes with instructional time, really it ends up being physical fighting, these confrontations, and then bullying.
Okay, since you're tracking that in another method, next time that you will be bringing this information back to us for a presentation, I'm guessing, would you also bring that information along too?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Thank you.
I do want to share that the 4 items that you see up there at the end of last year, these are the things we talked about that we saw arising compared to our other data, because our other data really showed there was a decrease in behavior for our first year back. These were the 4 areas of concentration because it really was what Lindsay was talking about. Now on the verbal confrontation, there can be occasionally a student to staff member verbal confrontation. Those are included in there and they're not split out between which ones were with adults and which ones were with kids. Does that make sense how I just said that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions or comments from the audience before they have a seat? Okay, thank you. Doug Thorne.
Thank you. In the area of old business, the administration is seeking this evening board approval of the board policy 3421.01A. That's the professional staff contract and compensation plan for the district's administrators. As noted, this policy governs compensation as well as contract duration for administrators employed by this board for the 2022-2023 school term. The revised policy includes a rubric governing the movement of current administrators within their assigned range, a procedure for review and reclassification or rather range changes of administrative positions when there has been a substantial change in the responsibilities assigned to that position, and set forth a requirement of board approval prior to the issuance of a multi-year contract after an administrator has completed their initial contract with the school district. We are seeking your approval of that policy this evening.
Doug, I'd like to make an amendment, if I could, on this policy. For this meeting only, I'd like to remove from consideration 3 positions, alternative programs principal, supervisor of student services, and the principal for School Without Walls. And I'd like to direct the administration to come back with additional information that the board has requested on these positions for our next meeting.
Is there a motion
Second.
or a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Remember, we have to call the roll again.
Okay.
I'll call.
Sorry.
Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Seiler,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Weaver,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mrs. Mullins.
Aye.
Thank you. Now the motion.
Is there a,
Now we actually need a motion to approve as amended. I'm sorry.
is there a motion to approve the amendment?
Or as amended.
As amended.
I'll make the motion.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Burnett.
Aye.
Mr. Seiler,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Weaver,
Aye.
Ms. Vondervellen.
Aye.
And Mrs. Mullins.
Thank you. And we will prepare those materials and get those to the board
Thank you, I
members.
appreciate that.
In the area of new business, the administration is requesting waiver of second reading and approval of the addition of 3 grant-funded positions to the miscellaneous employee group, which is board policy 3422.12S. Proposed revisions also include a number of editorial changes related both to titles of positions and recognition that certain of those positions within the miscellaneous employee group are actually grant-funded positions, so that we're a little bit clearer about the fact that some of these positions are grant-funded, and unless the grant is renewed, would go away at that point in time. Again, we're seeking waiver of second reading and your approval of this policy change this evening.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I didn't know, Doug, you unmuted. Did you have something to say?
No, I did not have anything to say.
Aye.
Mr. Blyler,
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Weaver,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mrs. Mullins.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any, speaking report?
Yes.
Bring you up either.
Thank you, Doug. I'll tell Dory you do.
Thank you.
Jonia?
Hi, Danya Hill. I'm St. Joe County. I live in St. Joe County, and I am a transportation bus driver. Don't mind, I'm going to read this here. We're going through through many changes in transportation by taking away and reducing drivers' jobs and hours. On February 16th, an email was sent out regarding overtime for drivers and helpers and transportation office staff due to 300 student count being down from Kevin Scott, CFO. He indicated as well that it will lead to future cost reduction actions as well. So if this is being told to the transportation department as a whole, as Tony Giannisi has said at least 2 times in meetings, that we are required to do on e-learning days or use a PB day, that bus drivers are the only people losing money. Then why are the bus trainer and dispatch supervisor being allowed overtime hours from Tony Giannisi to train in the evenings and weekends, and the dispatch supervisor allowed overtime to be a night dispatcher that was taken away from a driver that was posted, bidded, interviewed for, and worked it a year and was doing the position, but was suddenly not needed any longer. Another driver for another position was posted, bidded, and interviewed for a 12-month job that has now become 180 days. Drivers are continually losing money. At this time, I propose that we need to look at dispatch jobs and what they consist of. Answering the phones, using the radio for the drivers, use of a stop finder, walking around, looking for things to do that are non-dispatch, and training drivers. There is no need for any of these positions during summer hours and definitely does not need overtime hours. Therefore, I propose that dispatch positions be 180 days as they previously were, not 12 months. The trainer needs to be a full-time trainer without any overtime. And it seems that if drivers and helpers are continually losing money, as Tony Giannisi says, then we need to look at positions that are 12-month positions and put them back to their origins of 180 days without overtime as well.
Thank you. Carrie?
My name is Carrie and I reside here in Elkhart County. I'm also a school bus driver for Elkhart Community Schools. And I have two things I'd like to speak about. One of them I brought up a couple months ago in regards to our scheduled e-learning days. I believe that these days should be optional or only be required for the 4 hours that we're guaranteed on our contract without taking our family illness, personal illness, or personal business time. In the past, we were never required to report on these days. Then it was changed to a requirement of 4 hours, which I can understand because in our contract that we state, we are told that we are only guaranteed 4 hours a day. However, they are now scheduling us to work 8-hour work days on these e-learning days. No one's taking into consideration those of us that have kids that are also at home e-learning that need our guidance, or people like myself that work a second job between my scheduled routes. My route is scheduled from 6:10 a.m. till 8:30 a.m. and 1:45 to 4:30 p.m. I work my second job from 8:45 a.m. till 1:15 p.m. E-learning days are making it impossible for me to keep a second job or for anyone else to if they need to. When you get hired in at any job, you commit to those hours that were discussed, and I committed to the early hours and split shifts here at Elkhart Community Schools. And I committed to my other job the 4 hours that I entailed above. I also called around to other school districts in the area to see if their bus drivers reported on these scheduled e-learning days, and most of them do not. There's one that I did find, and they are only scheduled for the 4 hours that they're required. So I'm asking you guys look into this again to let us drivers and helpers who need a second job have a second job so we can live and make a living wage. And then secondly, I come, we're all wondering how people can now come into the department who have just started and start changing and taking away people's jobs. These jobs were applied for, interviewed for, and awarded. If so, are we going to downsize our office staff in the summers or cut their hours because the need's not there? I said probably not. So once again, drivers and helpers are the only one losing money within Elkhart Community Schools, and those words come straight out of Tony Giannisi's mouth.
Thank you. Rachel?
Today is March 14th, 2023. Today is the day after. The day after a mother lost her daughter. The day after a sister lost her best friend. The day after a family and entire community was shaken by the outcries of a young girl's suffering. Suffering so profound that the outcome of her pain resulted in her death. Today is a year in review. What have we learned in a year? The first time I presented to the board was June 28, 2022. I stood before you as a mother advocating for my son and the safety and well-being of all children, as I still do now. I requested that a DCS liaison be appointed to attend all future anti-bullying meetings to bridge identified gaps in communication and child safety. I additionally requested that the budget be frozen until we have a community consensus moving forward on how to ensure the safety and well-being of our children. No response or action was received by the board or administration thereafter. On October 11, 2022, I presented to the board detailing what parents experience when attempting to advocate for the safety and welfare of their children by this board and administration, noting the continued lies, misinformation, attempted manipulation, and disrespect. I noted that our dedicated teachers and frontline staff are also being silenced and set up to fail. I requested that from that day forward, everyone please leave the politics at the door so we may truly ask ourselves, how are the children? After I presented, I was approached by a board member who stated, and I quote, "Dr. T is the problem. He is the one that wants to keep the parents out of the loop." We have to get rid of him. No other action or response was received by the board or administration. However, we all see how this turned out for Dr. T. On January 24th, 2023, I presented to the board with my son present, detailing the abuse he's endured thus far this school year, which includes over a dozen incidents of verbal, physical, and/or sexual abuse that still remains undocumented by this district. Together, we requested that the board and administration prepare a response regarding when actionable, tangible efforts to institute policy that will truly ensure the safety and well-being of children will be taken. As of today, no response or action has been received by the board or administration. In the last year, I have learned that to advocate for the safety and well-being of my own child and other children puts a target not only on your back, but your child's. I have learned that this board and administration would rather attack a parent's character than be accountable for their own negligence. I have learned that education has become so political that our children are left to hang in the balance of personal agendas. I have learned that the individuals tasked with ensuring the safety and well-being of our children will only listen for 3 minutes and then believe they do not have to respond to us as parents. One thing I have learned long ago, and I pray that you all learn today, on March 14th, 2023, the day after, your silence will not protect you. Thank you.
Thank you. Max?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Max Yakey. I'm a working member of this community and have been a solid supporter of Elkhart Community Schools in various capacities, having also graduated from Elkhart Central High School myself. I currently have a high school junior enrolled here. I'm here tonight to express to this board my serious concern for the future of Elkhart Community Schools. The recent revelation the Elkhart Community School System continues to lose students at an alarming rate only confirms what many of us in this community have already recognized. The school system is in dire straits and is in need of immediate corrective action. Dr. Robert Hayworth and the board at that time initiated an ill-fated reorganization of our education system to supposedly encourage student retention. It didn't work. Now here we are years later, and it has only compounded and gotten worse. Students and teachers continue to leave at an alarming rate. Your next move needs to be the right move. You're now embarking on a new search for a superintendent. Please don't waste our money and your time on feasibility studies and search committees. Respectfully, you cannot expect a high caliber, nationally recognized candidates to take this job until some effort has been made to right the ship. I am here tonight to recommend that this board take immediate steps to restore community engagement and appoint an interim superintendent for a 1 to 3 year period. Doing so will restore desperately needed leadership, stabilize our school system, and stop the mass exodus of good teachers and students. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Weimer, do you have anything?
I do not, other than I was going to compliment the student production from Saturday night that I saw, but I think Mrs. Mullins may also be chiming in on that, so I will just leave it at that and allow her to elaborate.
If you do not understand the magnitude of talent that we have in our school, you missed seeing the opportunity. And it was not just the talent on the stage that was insane. There were some kids that I know, I had absolutely no idea they had that much courage or ability to perform, but it was also all the behind scenes. Like you could see the kids just whipping around and like moving the sets and changing the sets. But then of course music is my jam. So you are like witnessing the most talent from our pit. It was outstanding to see, to think about when Kristen started this, our music teachers having to get everything organized. It was, I mean, I knew it was going to be great, but it was just unbelievably confident, and it just, the talent was insane. It was great. So if you didn't see, I think there's somewhere that you can watch the video, but I cannot say enough about Mrs. Baker and our students and our music students and our teachers and our staff and the amount of money that they raised. Whoever was behind that is a genius. So yeah, kudos. Yeah, the parents, our parents, the support was outstanding. So all of the next plays, everybody needs to be there. I'll just buy everybody tickets, just one giant ticket so that we're all there. And I think they might have sold out like most of the shows. But anyways, kudos, congratulations. Yay, everybody, yay tonight.
Yeah, I do have a comment.
I know it.
Kidding.
Go ahead, Doug. You have the floor.
Oh, it's good. My turn. Saturday night, the Junior Air Force ROTC is having their winter military ball. And anyhow, this is the fourth year that Julie and I have attended. And it's also interesting to note that that particular activity has, for this year, has garnered like $2,600 in donations. And so it is growing, it's getting support. And I think sometimes that we tend to overlook the efforts of our leaders at the ROTC division down there. They need your support, and I would like to see an additional instructor added to that position down there. I think we have an open position there. We just need to get somebody. Anyhow, look forward to seeing you on Saturday night. Thanks.
Ready to waltz.
Meeting adjourned.